Let's try to raise the level of conversation a bit. It'll be hard, considering how low I've taken it. But let's bring in Professor of International Politics at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, Daniel Drezner. His latest piece in Foreign Affairs is titled Bracing for Trump 2.0. His possible return inspires fears in America's allies and hope in its rivals. Dan, I remembered in Congress leading up to a presidential election, I figured out pretty quickly, stuff just didn't happen. Right now, as far as international diplomacy goes, are things frozen? Because Joe Biden says, as you talk about, America is back, but everybody's going, our allies are saying, wait, not so fast. Let's see what happens in the next 15 months.
Well, I think that's frozen some areas of foreign policy. I mean, if you look at America's rivals like China and Russia, I think it's clear that Russia's not going to really want to engage in any negotiations on Ukraine unless and until they know that Donald Trump's not going to be the president a year from now, because in their mind, that would be a significant break. It would mean a drying up of U.S. aid to Ukraine. It would put Russia in a much stronger bargaining position. And similarly, China, I think, is frustrated because the Biden administration has taken, frankly, a lot of the Trump administration's tough on China rhetoric and actually implemented it and turned it into a reality. And they long for the years in which Trump was managing to fray America's alliances across the Pacific Rim. So they're going to dig in. On the other hand, I think a lot of America's allies are going to try to cement as much of the Biden administration's foreign policy as they can. This is why you're seeing, nascent signs of Eastern European countries and France trying to push for Ukraine to join NATO. If they join NATO, that locks in something that makes it that much harder for Trump to reverse. But on the whole, you're right. I mean, essentially what's going on is that all countries in the world have to plan on hedging because there is a possibility that Donald Trump might be the president on January 20th, 2025.
So if I'm a Western country and I have sensitive intel that I want to get to the United States, and I look back at Donald Trump, what he did in one of his first meetings in the White House, basically expose sources and methods of an ally to the Russian foreign minister. I look at what he's done with intel, when he left the White House. Do I really want to share that intel with the Biden administration within a year of time Donald Trump may be getting his hands on it and passing it along to whomever he wants to pass it along to?
I think it depends on the nature of the intel. I mean, there's forms of intelligence that require immediate tactical action. And so I'm presuming that groups like Five Eyes and other intelligence cooperation agreements are going to proceed without any concern about the next year. If Donald Trump wins in November 2024, though, yes, it would not surprise me if you start seeing our allies begin to recalibrate the amount of intelligence sharing they're going to engage with the United States, precisely for the concerns that you laid out. Donald Trump and intelligence secrecy don't go together very well. And so, therefore, you would expect not just, Five Eyes countries, but all of NATO, all of Pacific Rim, Ukraine, other vital allies and partners to suddenly start clamming up.
And of course, President Biden is going to make the case for his vision of the foreign policy this week as he heads to the G20 in India and then on to Vietnam, assuming, of course, he doesn't test positive for COVID. He's still in the window there. His wife, the First Lady, just did. Daniel, talk to us about how you view how the Middle East is viewing this. There's been some speculation that the president is trying to broker an agreement with Israel and Saudi Arabia, normalize relations there, pull Saudi Arabia at the very least away from Beijing. But that is pretty fraught. A piece from Tom Friedman in the Times this morning warns the president against it. How do you think that part of the world is watching the upcoming U.S. election?
The Middle East is the one region where you can argue that there are traditional American allies that might prefer a President Trump to a President Biden. Trump's relationship with Saudi Arabia was reasonably strong. Trump's relationship with Israel was also pretty strong, although it's worth noting that Trump was extremely critical of Benjamin Netanyahu because Netanyahu congratulated Biden on his 2020 election victory. And of course, Trump continues to persist in his deluded belief that he somehow won the 2020 election. But this is an area where I suspect that, particularly the Gulf Emirates are not going to be averse to Trump winning, but that's not going to stop them from any potential peace deal that the Biden administration is proffering. In other words, what I don't think they're going to do is to put their foreign policy on hold to help Donald Trump. Saudi Arabia is always going to put Saudi Arabia's interests first, and that's something that I think Americans in both parties need to realize as soon as possible.
All right, and you can read the new piece at foreignaffairs.com. Daniel Drezner, as always, thank you so much for being with us.